Hey there Wargamers, Justin our Painter here from Death Ray Designs, and today I'm going to show you guys a really easy technique to apply camo patterns to your miniatures. The piece we're going to be working on today is a converted Lehman Rust that we had laying around the shop. Went ahead and primed it black and applied a zenithal highlight from the top with gray. To achieve the colors and camo patterns on our tank today, we're going to need a few paints. For that, we're going to be using Swamp Ground and Pestilent Flesh for Minotaur. Those are going to be our overall green colors for our tank. We're going to be using Reaper's Dark Shadow and Minotaur's Cracked Leather. That'll be for our brown camo patterns. And finally, we'll be using Minotaur's Rotten Wood and Minotaur's Desolated Beach for one of our other camo stripes that'll be on this tank as well. The key tool necessary to achieve these effects, however, is Silly Putty. Yes, that's right, Silly Putty. I've been using this to do effects over on Twitch for about 2 years now, teaching you guys how to paint there, as well as my whole career as a commission artist, which has been 6 or 7 years. This is a technique I picked up from Lester Bursley years ago, and I'm going to show you guys how to use it to great effect today. Assuming you've already got your zenithal highlight applied to your tank, the next step is for you to determine where you want your first camo pattern to be. Now during today's tutorial, our tanks are going to kind of follow a Cadian theme from the Warhammer 40k universe, so we're going to have a green tank and we're going to be applying brown and tan camo patterns. So we're going to go ahead and come in with our tan colors and lay down the areas where I think I might want to put some stripes. There's no real rhyme or reason to this, we're just going to get into it and start laying down some colors. The side of our tank here's got a nice flat wide open panel here, and I think we're going to put a nice stripe across this. So we're going to come in with our Rotten Wood, which is the darker of our two tan colors, and we're going to start filling in areas where we might like to have some camo pattern stripes. Once we've finished applying our first layer of Rotten Wood here, we will be coming back in with Desolated Beach, which is the lighter of the two tan colors, and we're going to give these camo patterns a little bit of a highlight. So have fun with this. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. Just kind of have a little bit of fun and create interesting camo patterns. Whatever you think is going to look good or whatever looks really close to the source material you're trying to follow. There's no real way to screw this up so long as you use your basic hobby tools and knowledge, aka put on thin coats, don't spray too heavy in one area, don't let the paint pool up. With our Rotten Wood now applied and dry, it's time to come in with our Desolated Beach and hit all those high points and kind of create those nice gradients and transitions. We don't just want to have a solid color to this particular camo pattern because we could do better. We have an airbrush, and having a little bit of a gradient where we've got the transition of colors is just really going to push the effects and make this look even better. At this point you may be thinking, Justin, this looks like a hot mess. What are you doing? But we're going to let this paint dry. When we come in for the next step, I promise you this is all going to come together and you know exactly what we're trying to aim for. With our first series of stripes now dry, it's time to come in with our Silly Putty. We're going to use this to get some tight, crisp camo patterns on our tank here, and so long as you allow the paint to dry adequately, the Silly Putty will not peel off any of the paint. It's one of the major benefits of the Silly Putty is you can mold it and adapt it into whatever kind of shape that you need, and you don't really have to worry about it messing up the model or ruining the paint. There's not a lot of tackiness to it, just enough to get it to stick to the surface. Now we're going to come in here with our Silly Putty and try to follow all the patterns that we laid down with our airbrush. Now by applying this and pushing it down, we want to make sure that whatever is underneath it is fully colored. If you press this down and it starts to overlap areas that don't have paint on it, then when you peel it off, those areas are still going to be exposed. So it's important that you follow the patterns you laid down with the airbrush and you don't cover up anything that you want to actually have present later on. So right now at the top here we've got this tread. When we peel off this masking later when we're finished, that tread portion is still going to have that color on it. Fortunately, some of these details we're going to come back and have to do by hand if we wanted to finish the piece anyway, but it's important to note that this is how this masking is going to work. Don't be afraid to have some fun with this, get some interesting patterns, and play around with the width of your camo patterns as well. Make some interesting patterns, make some interesting widths, and make some really realistic looking camo patterns for your tanks. With our first layer of camo patterns now masked off, it's time to come in and start preparing for the second layer. And for that, we're going to be utilizing our Reaper Dark Shadow and our Minotaur cracked leather. We're going to be applying these in the same way that we did our tan colors, but in this case we're laying down brown, so we have 2 different camo patterns on our tank. We're going to start off by spraying our dark highlight from Reaper, and we're going to cross over some of this silly putty. It's fine if you spray on top of it, that's the whole reason we masked. But we want to do this because we're going to get these interesting meshing and blending of our camo patterns because they're going to overlap. Now, the way that our masking works is that we're applying this brown right now, and anywhere that the masking is still there and present, when we peel it up, our tan color is going to show through. So while we did apply the tan first, and it was our first layer, when we are finished with the tank and we pull the masking off, it is actually the top layer that the eye is going to see. It's going to look like that tan is crossing over the brown. So keep that in mind when you're spraying down your brown colors and trying to make these intricate crisscross camo patterns. Now, these don't have to be some crazy Da Vinci Code style patterns. Do something that looks interesting for you. For our highlight here across our dark shadow, we're going to mix dark shadow 1-to-1 roughly with our Minotaur cracked leather. Now this is going to give us a nice transition into a highlight across this camo pattern, just like we did with our tan stuff. Having these gradients on the model are only going to add to the effect and make the model look even better. With our brown camo patterns now dry, it's time to come in with our silly putty and fill in all these camo patterns just like we did with the tan. When you begin to apply this layer of silly putty, make sure you consider overlapping what's already here. By doing this and crossing over here, you're going to have a brown camo pattern that's actually going to be underneath the tan that's already there. As I said before, the tan is actually going to be the top layer of paint, even though it was the first layer that was put down. So make sure you come in here, put down silly putty striping here for the camo patterns that's thin enough that it covers the brown and it doesn't cover over any of the black that's still present, because you don't want that to be in the final product. And you want to make sure you have these interesting interlocking patterns that crisscross across the model. Now again, you don't want to have some Da Vinci Code style stuff going on, but do something that feels natural and looks cool and fits the aesthetic that you're going for. This should be fun, and if you're anything like me, when we get to a future step, this is really going to be like opening a gift when you peel off this masking tape. The model really is going to come to life. And there we go, we've got all of our camo patterns silly puttied off, and this is looking like some weird nurgly mess. But we're going to go ahead and get ready for the next step, and this is getting ready to come together. In preparation for the next step here, I've went ahead and laid down some black, followed by a zenithal gray highlight from the top. That leads us into the next step, and that's going to be applying whatever color is going to be the base color for our tank. In today's case, we're going to be applying some Minotaur Swamp Ground. As we begin applying our Swamp Ground here, it's important to note that you should always apply thin coats, smooth passes. You don't want to pull this up in any one area and have some weird thick paint. Now, on this particular case, more so than any other area where you might be working with an airbrush, when you've got silly putty on a model, if you spray too thick and heavy and it actually pulls next to the silly putty, when you peel that putty up, there's going to be weird flaky paint. It's not the end of the world if that does happen though, because that would be a good area to target with weathering, but it's something that I wanted to mention to you guys so you know and you're aware of what it can do and what happens if you're not being patient. So exercise patience with this, have some fun, and know that we're almost finished with the camo pattern in our tank. Make sure that whether you're painting your tank green or gray or blue or whatever color it is you may be working with, that when you're in these final steps that you go for full coverage. When you're finished with this layer and the accompanying highlight layer, the full tank should be covered. At this point, you should not have any black or gray showing through unless it's on an area that you're going to hand detail later. The reason that I mention this, however, is because once we're done with this step, we're done with the camo portion of the tank, and you want to make sure that you've got colors everywhere you want it. If you don't have the colors down where you want them and you've already pulled up the masking, it can be a little bit difficult and tricky to come in and fix that, so be aware. With our initial layer of green or swamp ground now applied, it's time to come in for another pass to hit all these areas that are still gray. For that, we're going to be coming back in with swamp ground again, but we're going to be mixing that 1-to-1 with pestilent flesh. This is going to give us a nice green highlight. As I said before, make sure when you're approaching this step here, when we're applying the final coat of green, that we are getting full coverage. There should be no gray left showing unless, again, it is an area that we're going to hand detail later. With our Swamp Ground Pestilent Flesh mix now applied, you can see that transition from dark green to light green across the whole tank. We're going to allow this some time to dry, and then we're going to come in and peel off that masking. With our paints now dry, it's the moment you guys have all been waiting for. It's the Christmas time, the gift time, the birthday unwrapping present time of the tutorial. We're going to come in here with a little piece of silly putty and press it onto the masking we've got down just to kind of adhere and give us something to grab onto and start peeling this off. If you allowed the paint to dry properly and you did not apply thick areas of paint, this should come off very smoothly, shouldn't have any flaking paint, and you'll very quickly start to see the beautiful tank that's below. For me, whether it's silly putty or masking tape, hazard stripes, whatever it is I'm working on, when I go to pull the masking off of a particular miniature I'm working on, something goes off in my brain, fireworks of excitement, because you go from seeing this big green blob in this case to something amazing when this comes off. If you're not enjoying pulling off the masking, then I don't know why you're painting, folks, but hopefully when you've achieved this and applied it to your miniatures, you get that happy feeling that I do when I'm looking at a completed vehicle. Our camo patterns look crisp, the transitions are nice, we've got these great crisscross patterns present on the side of the tank here. I think we're going to call this good. The only thing left for us to do is to detail it up, apply some weathering effects and some decals, and this thing will be ready for the tabletop. Alright, with the paint now dry and the silly putty pulled up, our camo pattern is now complete. Now if you've been following along at home, you'll realize this piece is not complete. Doing the camo patterns was easy. The next step would be adding all the details, doing the decal work, and the weathering. And if you're not sure on where to begin with those things, make sure you check out our YouTube video library where we've got a variety of tutorials to help you achieve the effects you'd like to on your vehicles. If you enjoyed this video, I encourage you to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ding the little bell so you get alerts when we put up new content. But more importantly, if you have any suggestions, critiques, or ideas that you'd like to share with us, make sure you sound off in the comments below. We do take the things you say to heart. We'd love to interact with you, and we'd like to hear from you in regards to what we could do to improve and get better. If you'd like to help support the channel, make sure you check out deathradesigns.com. Anything you do there helps keep the lights on, helps keep me employed so I can continue to produce content for you guys. If you happen to use any of these effects on your miniatures, make sure you check us out on Facebook. Maybe check out our Tap Garrison Facebook group, or tag us on Instagram. We'd love to see what you can cook up with our tutorials or how you can adapt them, make them your own. Make sure you interact with us, share that hobby goodness with the rest of the community, and as always, folks, happy wargaming.